Hi everyone, I'm Chenxing, and I'm going to introduce Cummings' Coding with Power toward a rhetoric of computer coding and composition. And this article explores the connection between computer programming and traditional composition. So first, let's have a look at the background and the literature review. Well, first, we all know the evolution of publishing industry. And with access to traditional academic publishing, stifled and their profit motive system, the electronic open source model of publication begins to prevail. And with this background, more and more researchers started to analyze the relationship between the coding community and composition community. And what writers know about the business of writing can inform and guide the coding community. And at the same time, coders have learned lessons about writing that readily apply to traditional writing formats. So, in order to better understand the relationship between the coding and composition, we need to know the characteristics of programming languages. And programming languages could represent not only new language formats, but also a new form of text. And also, a programming language is more than just a means for instructing a computer to perform tasks. The language also serves as a framework within which we organize our ideas about a process. However, few of the existing research focused on this topic. So the scant literature on relating coding and composition calls for the integration of programming languages with human languages. In other words, the coding and the composition. So in order to better understand the relationship between the coding and the composition, we need to employ the rhetorical triangle to analyze it. So we all know about the rhetorical triangle, and it has three components: the writer, the task, and the reader. Well, the writer writes tasks, which is read by reader, and it's the relationship between these three components. And the author also proposes the coding triangle, which also includes three components: the coder, the program, and the machine. And similarly, the coder produces the program, which is read by machine. The only difference is that the machine cannot really read the program. Well, instead, the machine processes the program. And so we can see that these two triangles hold some similarities, so we can draw parallel between composing and writing. So to better understand the parallel relationship between the composition and coding, we can analyze this from audience perspective. And the author just found that both the reader and machine cannot respond to writer or coder's intention. Well, in other words, the writer or the coder cannot reach out to the reader or machine directly. Well, the readers of traditional texts don't respond to the ideas that the writer had when composing texts. They just process the text on the page rather than the idea in the writer's head. And the human reader reading is certainly much more complex and undefined than the machine processor. Because the machine responds exactly and precisely to the text as entered. and there can be no other possible response, for the machine cannot think. It can only respond to the instructions that the coder has programmed for it. So therefore, it doesn't read the programmer's text at all, it only processes the code. So they both cannot respond to writers or coders' intention. From the perspective of the author and coder. While both the author and the coder draw upon feedback from previous work, and they also absorb knowledge from great works. So the coder's experience of audience within the coding triangle may not be driven by memories of being a reader of fiction, but perhaps that is as we should expect it. It is much more likely to see how the experience of using artful software, the rough equivalent of reading good writing for the writer, would drive the coder's creation process. And the author also employed Kittler's theory to explain the relationship between the programming and composing. And Kittler's theory of film viewed texts as material and historically situated events. And he provides a theoretical framework for positing the desires and results of the programmer within the framework of composition. So it is very easy to understand how the computer, a machine, can be an invaluable tool for teaching precision in writing. And Cummings introduced Kern's grammar class as a case study. Well, Kern created a class that combined the goals of teaching grammar, logic, and programming language into one unit. And his work could serve as a model for integrating code into the classroom. So Cummings develops the pedagogical guidance based on Kern's case study. So Cummings provides some pedagogical suggestions in terms of using code to teach writing. The first suggestion is to start small. You should focus on developing small coding exercise that parallel the writer's construction of a readerly audience and layer this in with other writing assessment tools, such as the peer response. And you should also disavow coding expertise. Even if you have a lot of coding experience to share, remember that the coding portion of the classroom content is to be used as a tool for better writing. And also, you should be clear with students about the grade consequences for the coding portion of the class. And you need to be clear with your students as to exactly how much coding will be taught and what effect that will have on their course grade. And you should also work with whichever coding language you feel most comfortable. You need not worry about using a current or trending processing language. And also, you should minimize transition time between the computer coding portion of the class and the writing portion. It's very important because the more you can integrate these two functions, the stronger the course will be. And last, you should consider using markup languages. Markup languages such as HTML, HTML, or the ever-expanding XML take traditional text and mark it with computer code. This article offers suggestions for thinking of new ways that a knowledge of coding can inform the teaching of writing. And the author also concludes with guidelines for writing teachers who wish to incorporate computer coding into their curriculum. And the most important part is that the act of writing for the machine and writing for a human audience develop similar skills, and one experience can be harnessed to inform the other. So that's all for this article. Thank you for listening.